During the family lunch, my daughter shouted, "You have always been a burden. Leave us alone." I quietly wept as she tossed my clothes onto the sidewalk. A week later, she received a copy of my will. "I am grateful to have you here. Follow my story until the very end and share the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled." The sound of utensils tapping against plates filled the dining room as we gathered for our regular Sunday lunch. The atmosphere was tense, heavy and suffocating, like dark clouds ready to burst. My daughter Emily avoided making eye contact since I arrived, instead focusing on shifting food around her plate. Her husband, Michael, sat silently beside her, his eyes fixed on his meal. "The potatoes are slightly undercooked," Emily murmured, pushing them aside. I offered, "I can warm them up more if you want," already halfway standing. "No need," she snapped sharply. "Just sit down, Mom." I sank back into my chair, the familiar heaviness of sadness settling in my heart. At 66, I had learned to tread carefully around my only daughter. But recently, the situation had deteriorated even further. "How is the book club going, Helen?" Michael asked, trying to ease the uneasy quiet. Before I could respond, Emily interrupted sharply. "Mom's book club is the last thing we care about now." I took a sip of water, attempting to calm my trembling hands. "Is everything okay, Emily?" She slammed her fork down, causing me to startle. "No, nothing is okay. Michael and I have been discussing and we've reached a conclusion." Michael shifted uneasily on his seat, his gaze still avoiding mine. "We cannot keep doing this," Emily continued, her voice growing louder. "Having you here, constantly needing assistance, taking up space in our lives, it is too overwhelming." My heart began to race. "I do not understand, dear. What are you trying to say?" "I am saying you must find another place to live. It is over." Those words struck me like a heavy blow. "But this is my home, the one I have lived in for 3 decades. Emily's tone turned icy. "Since Dad passed, the house has been in my name. Remember, you transferred it to me to make things easier when you turned 60. I recalled. After David died, I had been so lost, so trusting. Emily had suggested putting the property under her name would safeguard me if I ever needed nursing care. "It is just a legal formality, Mom," she assured me. "Nothing will change." "You have been nothing but a burden," Emily said, rising. "Do you realize how much it costs to upkeep this place, to afford your medicines, to take you to your endless doctor visits? I have never asked for anything." "You have always been a drain," she interrupted, "first with Dad supporting you and now with us." Tears stung my eyes. After David died, when Emily was only 12, I had worked 2 jobs to give her everything, including supporting her through college had taken all my strength. I had pushed aside my own sorrow to remain strong for her, even selling my jewelry to afford her first car and skipping meals when money was scarce. "Emily," Michael finally said in a low voice, "this is not what we agreed on." She paid no attention to him. "I want you gone by tonight," she declared. "Tonight?" I whispered back. "But where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my concern," she snapped, storming out of the room. Michael sat there, motionless, confusion clearly written on his face. "Helen, I murmured quietly. "Please, don't say anything," I begged before standing unsteadily and heading to my bedroom, the smallest in the house, the one I had taken after giving Emily and Michael the master bedroom when they temporarily moved in 5 years ago after their condo flooded. About 20 minutes later, I heard Emily's furious footsteps approaching down the hallway. My bedroom door burst open. "Why aren't you packing?" she demanded. "Emily, can we please talk about this?" I implored. "You never had a place to go before," she said, yanking open my closet door. She grabbed my clothes by the handful, carrying them through the house. I followed in shock as she flung open the front door and threw my belongings onto the front lawn. Neighbors across the street stopped to watch. "You were always a burden," she yelled loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Just disappear from our lives." My blouses, dresses, and slacks, Modest clothes I had kept for years were strewn across the grass and the driveway. The dress I had worn to David's funeral landed in a puddle by the curb. Michael appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Emily, stop this." "The neighbors, I don't care," she shouted. "Let them see. Let them all see what a burden she has been." I stood on the porch, silent tears streaming down my cheeks. I was 66 years old, yet I was being cast out like trash. Mrs. Peterson from next door approached slowly. "Helen, do you need help, dear?" Emily spun around sharply. "Mind your own business." I placed a trembling hand on Mrs. Peterson's arm. "It's all right," I whispered, though nothing felt all right. As the afternoon sun stretched long shadows over what used to be my home, I gathered my scattered belongings, carefully folding each piece despite my aching, arthritic hands. My entire life had been reduced to a few bags filled with clothes and personal items. Michael helped me carry my things to my old car, speaking softly. "I'm sorry, Helen. I never wanted this. I'll talk to her once she calms down." I looked back at the house where I had raised my daughter, where David and I had built our life, where his spirit still lingered in the rose bushes he had planted and the porch swing he had crafted. "I loved her from the moment I knew I was carrying her," I said quietly. "I would have given my life for her." As I drove away, watching my home vanish in the rearview mirror, something inside me shattered. Yet beneath the sorrow, beneath the pain, a small spark of hope began to glow. It was a place that would soon develop into something neither Emily nor I could have envisioned. The small apartment carried the scent of fresh paint and new opportunities. It was modest, a one-bedroom unit located in a simple senior living complex on the other side of town. Yet, at that moment, it was a refuge. I sat on the edge of the single bed, surrounded by the few belongings I had managed to rescue from my previous existence. 3 days had slipped by since Emily had forced me out. 3 days spent sobbing myself to sleep, flinching at every phone call in hope that she might be on the line to say she was sorry, and questioning where I had failed as a mother. "You must eat something, Helen," Mrs. Peterson encouraged, placing a sandwich on the tiny dining table. My oldest friend had taken me in on that dreadful first night and helped me secure this apartment the very next day. "I am not hungry," I responded, though I cannot recall when I last ate. Mrs. Peterson sat beside me, her aged hand warming mine. "We have shared 4 decades of friendship, and I have never seen you this way. Please tell me." I inhaled shakily. "I confided everything in her, Mrs. Peterson." "I know you did, dear. After David passed away, you worked tirelessly, holding down 2 jobs, sometimes even 3 during the festive season. You never treated yourself to anything because you wanted Emily to have dance classes, summer camp, and those extravagant jeans she insisted on." Mrs. Peterson nodded with the knowing gaze that comes from observing a lifetime unfold in all its complexity. Now my voice broke as I said, "And now she states, I'm a burden." "That is not true," Michael said with conviction. "Deep inside, she understands that." I shook my head. "You did not see her expression, Michael. There was so much disdain." Michael took a deep breath and stood up. "Well, there is something she does not know, right? Something that could make her change her mind quite quickly." I looked up suddenly. "I never shared this with anyone except you. Maybe it is time you did." Walking over to my purse, I took out a weathered leather folder and placed it on the table. Inside were financial papers, land titles, and investment records. David was always a man ahead of his time, I said softly, placing my finger on his signature on one of the forms. When he was diagnosed, he understood he would not grow old. The night before David passed away, he made me promise something. "Do not tell Emily about the property," he whispered. "Not until she is mature enough to understand. Money changes people, Helen." The land in question was 5 acres just outside town that David had inherited from his grandfather. When he died, it seemed useless, just wild fields on the edges of the city. But 15 years ago, the town started growing that way. Builders put up a shopping plaza nearby, Then residential areas followed. The value of our little piece of land soared. "What is it worth now?" Michael asked. "The last bid was just over $2 million, I answered quietly. Michael whistled, and Emily does not have a clue. No. After David passed, I focused so much on keeping us afloat. Water, making certain that Emily had everything she required. However, as she grew older, she never appeared to be responsible enough. She has always acted on impulse when it came to money, similar to those credit cards she maxed out during university. I nodded in understanding, and the car loans, along with the emergencies that consistently forced me to deplete my savings. Margaret shook her head in disbelief. So, for all these years, you have lived simply, sometimes facing difficulties, while sitting on a fortune. It was not about the money, Margaret. It was about respecting David's wishes, about waiting until Emily was prepared. Now I closed the portfolio, a new determination setting in. At last, I realized she never would be ready. That same afternoon, I went to see my lawyer, Thomas Edwards, who had been David's close friend and had overseen our modest affairs over the years. "I want to alter my will," I told him after sharing the recent developments. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "I always worried about you placing the house in Emily's name, Helen." I trusted her, I replied simply. "That was a mistake," he agreed softly. "What kind of changes did you have in mind?" "I want the majority of the estate to support charitable organizations, especially those that assist elderly people who have been neglected by their families." The irony was not lost on either of us. A small portion should be assigned to my grandson Jason's educational fund to be managed by a trustee, not Emily. As for Emily herself, I hesitated for a moment. A modest sum, but with certain restrictions. As Michael prepared the updated will, I sensed a burden lifting from my shoulders. For many years, I had shielded Emily from the fallout, picked up after her mistakes, and excused her selfish acts. That chapter was closing today. I requested a copy be sent to Emily, I said while signing the papers. Not the entire document, just enough to reveal there was more to her mother than she had realized. Michael raised his brow. "Are you certain that is a good idea?" I confessed that it was not wise, but it was essential. Later that evening, while organizing my sparse belongings in the apartment, my phone buzzed. The caller was unknown to me. Mom. Emily's voice sounded different, controlled, almost gentle. "I've been trying to get in touch with you. Have you been available?" I kept my tone even despite the pounding of my heart. "We need to talk. I may have handled the other day poorly." "Poorly?" I echoed. "You dumped my clothes on the lawn and told me to vanish from your life. I was under pressure. You know how David's company has been struggling, and Jason has college applications coming soon. What do you need, Emily?" I cut in, breaking my usual pattern. There was silence. "I received a message from Michael at Edward's office today. That was it. Did you know?" I kept my voice casual. "Mum, I had no knowledge of the property or any of this. Why did you keep it from me?" I sat on my new bed, running my hand over the modest quilt. "Would it have altered how you treated me?" Another silence, longer now. "Certainly it would have. You are my mother. I love you." The words were supposed to comfort me, yet they left me feeling empty. More than 50 years of loving her, always putting her before myself. And only now, when she discovered I possessed something she desired. Did she promise to return my love? She urged, "We need to talk face to face. Why not come over for dinner tomorrow evening? I'll prepare your favorite pot roast." I closed my eyes, imagining her face, not as it had been during her angry outburst, but as it was when she was a child of 5, gazing up at me with absolute trust and admiration. When did that shift occur? When did I become merely a barrier to her goals? "I will consider it," I finally replied. "Wonderful. And Mom, I truly regret everything. We all say things we do not truly mean at times." After hanging up, Margaret's phrase kept ringing in my head. "Money transforms people." It certainly does. yet possibly not in the way Emily presumed. Because while my daughter thought she had uncovered my secret, she was far from realizing what I genuinely intended. Emily's house, once my own, appeared unchanged as I drove into the driveway. Still, everything had shifted. The porch light shone brightly, inviting me back to a place that had rejected me just a week earlier. I stayed inside my car a moment, summoning the courage needed for what awaited me. The front door opened before I could even raise my hand to knock. There stood Emily, her hair perfectly arranged, wearing a floral dress I had never seen before. "Mom," she called out, her voice sweet and eager. "I am so pleased." "You came," she said as she leaned in for an embrace. I returned it stiffly, noticing how she seemed to recoil at the scent of my modest apartment, which had replaced my usual lavender perfume. "Please, come in," she urged, leading me inside as though I were a distinguished visitor rather than the woman who had raised her in this very home. The dining room had been transformed. Flickering candles illuminated the table, fine china was carefully arranged, and the aroma of pot roast, indeed my favorite, filled the room. Michael stood awkwardly by the kitchen doorway, his face showing a blend of guilt and relief. "Helen," he said softly, stepping forward to take my coat. "It is good to see you." "Is it?" I asked simply. His gaze dropped. "Yes, it is," Emily quickly added. "Jason is at a friend's house studying. He will be very upset he missed you." I nodded, suspecting my 14-year-old grandson had been sent away purposely for this occasion. "Can I get you some wine, Mom?" Emily offered, already pouring a glass of the expensive red she knew I sometimes enjoyed on special nights. "No, thank you," I replied. "I prefer to stay clear-headed tonight." A flicker of something flashed in her eyes, perhaps irritation, but her smile stayed in place. "Of course, water or tea will be fine." We sat down at the table, the silence only broken by the soft clinking of silverware against dishes. At last, Emily cleared her throat. "Mom, I want to apologize for what happened last week. I was There was a great deal of tension, and I took it out on you. That was unforgivable." I met her eyes without flinching. Yet here you stand, asking for forgiveness. Michael shifted uneasily in his seat. "Everyone makes errors," Emily continued, reaching out to hold my hand. I fought the impulse to pull away. "Families are supposed to support each other, don't you agree? Is that what you believed when you threw my clothes onto the lawn?" Her smile grew tight. "Mum, please, I am trying." "What exactly do you aim to achieve, Emily?" I exchanged a swift look with Michael. "To fix things, obviously. To bring you back to where you belong." "Home," I echoed. "This ceased being my home the instant you decided I was a burden." "I didn't mean it that way," she insisted. "It was just a brief moment of poor judgment." I took a small bite of the pot roast, savoring it slowly. "Thomas Edwards reached out to me. He told me you had called his office 5 times since you got the revised copy of my will." Emily's cheeks colored. I was worried, nothing more. Learning about the property was such a surprise. Was it the property that shocked you, or the realization that your supposedly dependent mother isn't as helpless as you believed? Her composure flickered briefly. "Mom, you never told me about any of this. All these years we could have..." "Could have what?" I interrupted. "Sold the land, spent the money, lived more lavishly." "That is unfair," she objected. "We have faced financial difficulties, particularly with Michael's. Last year brought a significant decline in business." Michael looked down at his plate and said, "Emily, maybe we should not." "No, Michael," I replied. "Let her go on. I want to understand these financial difficulties." Emily straightened up, evidently relieved by the chance to explain. "Well, Jason's private education costs a fortune. The house needs a new roof. The pool requires upkeep, and my car is already 4 years old." As she listed her financial burdens, which seemed more like luxuries than essentials, I thought about my small apartment and how carefully I counted every penny to afford my arthritis medication. "I see," I responded when she finally stopped to catch her breath. And these financial pressures justified forcing your mother out on the street. I told you I was not thinking clearly, she said, her patience visibly thinning. But now we can start over. You could move back in, and as a family, we could discuss the property together. There it was, the true motive behind the candles, the pot roast, and the apologies. Actually, I said calmly, I am quite comfortable in my new home. But it is so small, Emily objected. In that neighborhood, it suits me perfectly, and the neighbors are kind. One of them, Grace, introduced me to a support group. A support group? Michael spoke up for the first time since we sat down. Yes, I explained. It is for elderly people mistreated by their families. It has been very enlightening. Emily's face darkened. You are telling strangers about us, exposing our private matters, I said quietly. I'm simply sharing my experience. It helps to realize that I am not alone. This is absurd, Emily snapped, her facade of kindness finally breaking. These people are manipulating you. I could not stop myself from laughing. That is quite amusing coming from you. Her cheeks flushed with irritation. What do you mean by that? I replied. I know about the credit card debt, Emily. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Michael suddenly looked up, his eyes wide with bewilderment. What credit card debt? He asked slowly. Emily gave me a cautionary glance, but I stayed composed. The 3 cards you have been hiding from Michael. The $27,000 spent last year on clothing, spa visits, and that weekend trip to Vegas with your friends, which you told Michael was a work trip. How could you? Emily began but quickly stopped herself. Michael turned to his wife, his face growing stern. Is this true? I was going to tell you, she stammered. I just needed to find the right moment. There is more, I said, looking directly at Michael. The reason Emily was so eager to get me out of the house was not just about the inconvenience. She intended to take out a home equity loan, but could not do that while I was living here due to legal issues with the property transfer. Michael's face paled. We talked about this and agreed not to take a loan against the house. Emily stood up suddenly. This is none of her concern. It became my concern when you left me without a home, I answered, still sitting and composed. The flawless dinner was now ruined. Emily's carefully built mask had fallen apart, showing the reality I had known all along, that her sudden shift in attitude was not about regret, but about what she believed she could gain from me. As I got up to leave, I felt no victory, only a profound sorrow for what our relationship had turned into, and a quiet resolve about my next steps. I think this is the end for us, I said gently. Thank you for the meal. Michael stood up quickly. I'll see you out, Helen. Outside on the porch, away from Emily's hearing, he spoke quietly. I did not know about any of this, the credit cards, the loan, I swear. I believe you, I replied sincerely. Michael had always been passive but never harsh. What happens now? He asked. I looked up at the stars appearing in the night sky, the same stars I had shown Emily when she was a child, teaching her to wish upon the brightest ones. Now, I said, we all live with the decisions we have made. As I drove off, I caught a glimpse in my rearview mirror. Michael stood alone on the porch, watching me leave, while inside, a new storm was surely forming. I had sown the seeds of honesty, and now I would allow them to take root. 2 weeks went by without any messages from Emily or Michael. Each day, I grew more at ease with my fresh start. My small apartment slowly turned into a home felt like a refuge adorned with the few cherished mementos I had managed to preserve. David's reading glasses, our wedding picture, and the handmade ceramic bowl Emily had made for me in 3rd grade were small treasures burdened with memories. I had just returned from my support group meeting when my phone lit up. Michael's name appeared on the screen. Helen. His voice sounded tense. Can we talk? I answered without hesitation, putting down my purse. Is everything all right? He let out a hollow laugh. Not exactly. Emily and I have been struggling since your dinner visit. I expressed sympathy, though deep down I was not shocked. Don't worry, it was necessary, he said, pausing. I've been examining our finances. It is much worse than I expected. Far worse. I remained silent, giving him space to explain at his own rhythm. She has been concealing things for years, Helen. Not just credit cards. There are personal loans, online shopping accounts. She even withdrew money from Jason's college fund. Mention of my grandson made my heart drop. How much? I asked. Almost $8,000. She claimed it was a loan. He hesitated. Michael, I am sorry, I said. The truth is, he continued, she remains obsessed with your property. She keeps talking about what we could do if we had that money, how it would fix everything, as though $2 million would simply disappear into her hands. I shut my eyes, David's warnings reverberating in my thoughts. He had been right all along. Helen, she is planning something. She intends to challenge your recent will, claiming that you are not of sound mind. She has consulted with a lawyer. A cold sensation settled deeply in my stomach. I understand. I do not agree with any of this, he added swiftly. That is precisely why I am reaching out. You should be prepared for what lies ahead. Thank you, Michael. That is kind of you. It is the very least I can offer, he replied softly. After everything. Once we ended the call, I remained still for several minutes, trying to absorb the news. Then I decided to contact Thomas Edwards myself. The following Saturday, I received a text from Emily inviting me to join her for coffee. I selected a public setting, a bustling cafe downtown, where the steady murmur of conversations would serve both as background noise and witnesses. Arriving ahead of time, I picked a table near the back with an unobstructed view of the door. When Emily entered, I barely recognized her. The polished look she had worn to our dinner was gone. Her hair was hastily pulled back. Dark shadows framed her eyes, and although her clothes were still costly, they appeared wrinkled. "Mum," she said as she slid into the chair opposite me, "thank you for coming." "You sounded urgent," I responded. She ordered a triple espresso, her fingers nervously tapping on the table as we waited. "Michael and I are having problems," she finally admitted. "He is acting completely unreasonable." I took a sip of my tea. "What kind of problems?" "He is fixated on our finances, threatening to separate our accounts. He even brought up divorce." Her voice trembled on the final word. "That must be tough." She glanced up quickly, maybe expecting more compassion than I had shown. "It's his fault as well. You know, his business has been struggling for many years. If he had been more successful, we wouldn't be in this situation." I examined my daughter's face, the same face I once admired as she took her first steps and spoke her first words. Where had that sweet child disappeared to? What exact situation is that? The one involving debt? She admitted it hesitantly. But everyone carries debt. It is normal. Not everyone conceals it from their spouse, I remarked, or takes money from their child's education fund. Her eyes grew wide. "He told you about that. It was only temporary. I intended to return the money." "With what funds, Emily?" She leaned in, lowering her tone. "That is actually why I wanted to speak with you. This matter of the will and the property. We can find a solution, can't we? I am your daughter, your only child." "Yes, you are," I agreed. "That is why your actions hurt so much." "I have apologized for that," she said loudly, attracting attention from nearby tables. "What else do you want from me?" "I do not want anything from you, Emily. That is what you fail to understand." She leaned back, confusion showing on her face. "Then why are we here?" "Because you requested to meet, and because I believe it is time we are truthful with one another." Her face grew stern. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means I am aware. You are planning to challenge my will, claiming that I am incapable of managing my own affairs." Emily's mouth opened and then closed. For once, she appeared completely speechless. "Michael told you," she finally spoke, her tone flat, "that he was worried." "He had no right," I snapped back. "This concerns only you and me." "No, Emily, this is about your desire for my money. Money you did not even know existed until 2 weeks ago. It is not just about money," she insisted. "It is about justice. I am your family. That property should remain within the family. And what would you do with it? Settle your secret credit card debts? Purchase a new vehicle? Take another trip to Vegas? Her face reddened with anger. You are being harsh. I am being realistic, I corrected her. Your father was right to keep this from you. You have never been responsible with money, and you have never faced the consequences of your actions. So, this is punishment for what? Being human and making mistakes? I shook my head. This is not punishment, Emily. This is me finally establishing boundaries by distributing what should be my inheritance. Her voice rose again as she spoke of causes unknown to strangers, causes that your father and I believed in, for your son's future, and yes, a portion to you, but with terms meant to truly help you and not support further destructive habits. She abruptly stood, nearly knocking over her untouched espresso. This is not over. You cannot do this to me. I am not doing anything to you, I said calmly. I am simply making decisions about my own property, my own money. We will find out what the judge has to say about that, she warned, when they hear how you deserted your family, how you are mentally unstable. Sit down, Emily, I said calmly yet firmly. There was something in my voice that caused her to pause. She gradually sank back into her chair. Before you follow that route, I added, you should be aware that Thomas Edwards has been keeping a record of everything. Your sudden change of heart after discovering the property, your secret debts, even your intention to dispute the will. I have been examined by 2 different doctors who can confirm my mental soundness, and your threats today are being recorded. Her complexion turned pale. You must be bluffing. I slid my phone across the table, its screen showing an ongoing recording. You trapped me, she murmured. I defended myself, I said firmly. Something I should have done many years ago. For a brief moment, Emily appeared like the little girl caught stealing cookies. Frightened, on the defensive, but deep down realizing she had made a mistake. Then her face turned hard once more. You believe you have won, don't you? She said with bitterness. Very well. Keep your precious money. I do not need it. I do not need you. She rose again, grabbing her handbag. Michael is leaving me anyway. Jason barely talks to me. Are you satisfied now? You have taken everything. As she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me alone at the table, I experienced no triumph, only deep sorrow. I had not taken anything from Emily. She had lost everything on her own, gradually, and through each decision she made. Later that evening, while sitting on my tiny balcony and watching the sun dip below the horizon, my phone vibrated with a message. It was from Michael. Jason wants to see you. Is tomorrow good? For the first time in weeks, a faint spark of optimism stirred inside me. Maybe not all hope was gone after all. The park bench felt cool beneath me as I observed Jason tossing pieces of bread to the eager ducks gathered at the edge of the pond. At 14, my grandson was caught in that challenging stage between childhood and adulthood. His long limbs were still growing into place, his voice sometimes cracking, yet his eyes possessed a depth and understanding beyond his years. Michael sat next to me, his demeanor more at ease than I had seen in a long time. The 3 of us had been there for nearly an hour, sharing a simple afternoon that somehow felt oddly normal, despite the turmoil we'd endured recently. He's missed you, Michael said softly, gesturing towards Jason. He was furious when he heard what happened. He shouldn't be dragged into this, I responded firmly. He's no longer a child. He notices far more than we realize. Michael exhaled heavily and ran a hand through his hair. Emily, I need to tell you something. I filed for divorce. I turned to look at him, seeing both anguish and relief written across his face. Are you certain this is what you want? I asked cautiously. It's what has to be done, he replied with conviction. After everything was uncovered, the debt, the deception, what she did to you, I realized this was not new behavior at all. This was simply who she had always been. I had just refused to acknowledge it. I nodded quietly, recalling all the moments I had made the same decision. choosing to ignore Emily's manipulations because it was easier than facing the reality. She was not always like this, I whispered. When she was a child, she was so full of love and open-hearted. What could have changed her? I shook my head. I have asked myself that question countless times. Maybe it was losing her father at such a young age. Perhaps it was my own fault. Maybe I spoiled her too much, trying to make up for David not being there. You cannot blame yourself for her decisions, Helen said gently. Can I, though? I am her mother after all. Michael jogged back to us, his pockets empty of bread, cheeks rosy from the crisp autumn air. The ducks want more, he said with a bright smile. Tell them they have had enough, I told him, returning his grin. We should head home now. Your grandmother likely has plans. Actually, I do not, I replied. Would you like to come over to my apartment? It is not much, but I could make some hot chocolate. Michael's face lit up instantly. With marshmallows. Is there any other way? An hour later, my small apartment buzzed with laughter more than it had since I moved in. Michael explored every little corner, admiring the few old photographs I had kept, asking about my life before he was born. Is this Grandpa? He pointed at a faded photo of David standing next to our old Chevy. Yes, I responded, smiling warmly at the memory. That photograph was taken during the summer before you were born. Michael was incredibly thrilled about becoming a grandfather. Mom never mentions him, Jason remarked, his expression thoughtful. She hardly talks about you either. It's as if the family only began with her. Michael and I exchanged looks. Your mother sees things differently, I replied cautiously. Jason set the picture down. Are you saying she lies? Jason, Michael cautioned. It's true, Dad. She lies about everything. Where she's going, who she's with, how much things cost. He gazed at me with those knowing eyes. I overheard her on the phone recently, talking to someone about challenging Grandma's will. She said she would say whatever was necessary to get the money. My heart ached for this child caught in the middle of grown-up troubles. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Jason shrugged. I'm not a child. I know Mom has problems. Michael placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We will get through this, buddy. Things may be unusual for a bit, but we will be fine. As they were about to leave, Jason gave me a tight hug. Can I come back tomorrow? I have a science project, and Dad is awful at that kind of stuff. I laughed. Hey, Michael protested, though he was smiling too. Of course you can, I said to Jason. Anytime. After they left, I sat quietly, enjoying the warmth their visit had brought to my small space. For the first time since Emily had. Thrown out, I experienced a surprising calmness and a sense of new opportunities. The following morning, sharp knocking woke me up. I slipped on my robe and opened the door to find Emily standing there with a furious expression. How could you? She demanded, pushing past me into the apartment. Emily, what is this? I asked. You turned them against me, she accused, spinning to face me. Michael is filing for divorce. Did you know? Now he is also planting doubts in Jason's mind. I kept my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I never convinced anyone against you. Michael came to his own conclusion after what he uncovered. You told him about the credit cards, about Vegas. You deceived your husband, Emily. You took money from your son's college fund. Those were your actions, not mine. She moved restlessly around the cramped living room like a trapped animal. He is trying to take everything. The house, full custody of Jason. He claims that I am unstable. Me? After he gave up on our marriage at the first difficulty. Is that really your perspective? I asked. She stopped and stared at me with wild eyes. What do you mean? Michael did not abandon your marriage. He is reacting to years of lies. There is a difference. Oh, so now you are on his side, she spat. My own mother. I am on no one's side, Emily. I am simply trying to have a clear understanding. She laughed without humor. Sure, that is why you let my son visit here, filling his head with who knows what. Jason wanted to see me, I said, and we never talk about you. I do not believe that. She looked around the apartment with obvious contempt. Look at this place. It is miserable. You live like some unfortunate soul, even though we both know you have millions. I inhaled deeply. Money is not everything, Emily. That is easy for you to say when you have it, she snapped. Do you realize what I am going through? My life is unraveling. The bank called about the mortgage payment. My credit cards are maxed out. And now Michael is threatening to reveal everything in the divorce case. I am sorry you are having a hard time, I said sincerely. Despite everything, this was still my child. But I cannot fix this for you. You can, she pleaded, her tone softening into desperation. You could help me this once, just me alone. That is all I ask. I will pay you back, I promise. For a moment I hesitated. The natural urge to protect, to make things right, was strong. But then I recalled the clothes strewn across the yard, the harsh words, the years full of manipulation. No, Emily, I whispered gently. I will not enable you anymore. Her expression changed completely, vulnerability turning into icy anger. You will regret this, she spat. I am not finished fighting for what belongs to me. And when I succeed, do not expect any kindness from me. Is that truly how your father and I raised you? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Someone who threatens her own mother? Something glimmered in her eyes, perhaps doubt or a brief spark of self-realization, but it vanished quickly. It disappeared as swiftly as it had come into view. You are the one who changed, she accused me. You are the one who abandoned your family. As she rushed out of the room, slamming the door forcefully behind her, I collapsed onto the sofa, my hands shaking. The confrontation left me unsettled, yet oddly determined. This was no longer solely about money. It had become about breaking a cycle that had endured far too long. My phone vibrated with a message from Margaret. Coffee this afternoon? I want you to meet someone. After a brief moment of hesitation, I replied, I would love to. It was time to live my life anew. Not as Emily's mother or David's widow, but as Helen, a woman with her own journey still unfolding. 6 months can transform everything. As spring blossoms illuminated the city parks, I found myself in Thomas Edwards' office, finalizing the details of my estate plan. The winter had been long and challenging, yet as days slowly grew longer, my determination also became stronger. Everything appears to be in order, Thomas said, sliding the papers across his desk. The trust for Jason is secure. The charitable foundation is established, and the terms for Emily's share are clearly defined. I signed each page with careful attention. It is unquestionably secure. She cannot dispute it. Nothing is entirely unchallengeable in law, Thomas acknowledged, but we have taken every necessary step. Medical assessments, documented history of her actions, and her poor financial decisions. It would be incredibly challenging for her to successfully contest this case. Michael's testimony could prove crucial if the situation demanded it. Thomas gave a confirming nod. His statement carried great weight, as did Jason's, though I hoped it would never come to that. I carefully set the pen down, feeling a burden lift from my chest. Thank you, Thomas, for everything. David would have been proud of you, Helen said softly. You have honored his desires while carving out your own journey. As I left the office, the warmth of the spring sun touched my face, and I reflected on how much had changed since that dreadful Sunday when Emily had thrown me out. The pain had not vanished. I doubted it ever would entirely, but it had morphed into something different, something that pushed me onward instead of holding me back. I walked the 3 blocks to the community college where, at the age of 66, I had enrolled in a literature class. It was Margaret's idea, a way to pursue a dream I had abandoned after David's death when raising Emily became my primary focus. You are just in time, Professor Jenkins said, as I slipped into the classroom. We were about to analyze your paper on Jane Austen. My classmates, mostly young enough to be my grandchildren, turned to greet me with smiles. Over the past few months, I had transformed from being the old woman sitting in the back row to simply Helen, whose observations they valued and whose homemade cookies they eagerly awaited each Thursday. After class, I checked my phone and saw a message from Michael. Jason earned an A on his science project. He mentioned he could not have accomplished it without his grandmother's support. "How about dinner tonight to celebrate?" I responded with a smile, quickly typing back a positive reply. The bond between my grandson and me had grown in ways I never anticipated. 3 nights each week, he visited my apartment, sometimes accompanied by Michael, other times coming alone, for homework assistance, cooking tips, or just to chat. He served as the link that connected my history to the future, a sign that family ties could mend as well as wound. Michael had also become an unexpected supporter. As his separation from Emily moved forward, he had assured me that I would always be Jason's grandmother, forever welcomed in their lives. His generosity helped soothe the pain caused by Emily's ongoing refusal to accept me. The final stop on my day was the cafe where I was to meet Helen and Robert. Thinking about Robert made me smile and stirred a long-lost excitement deep within my heart. I had met him 4 months earlier. He was Helen's brother-in-law, who had recently lost his wife. A retired English professor with gentle eyes and a dry sense of humor similar to mine, our friendship had unfolded gradually and carefully, both of us bearing the burdens of former sorrows. "There she is," Robert greeted warmly as I neared their table. He rose to pull out my chair, a courteous act that always made Helen roll her eyes with affection. "How did your meeting with Thomas go?" Helen inquired, sliding a cup of tea toward me. She always... Someone placed the order for me since I was running late. "Everything is settled," I responded. "It feels final." Robert's hand briefly covered mine. "Are you comfortable with this?" I nodded. "It is time. The property is set to be developed next month. The funds will support everything we talked about: Jason's education, the Senior Advocacy Foundation, and yes, Emily's trust fund." "Has she attempted to reach out to you?" Margaret asked. "Not directly. Michael says she has been sober for 2 months now and attends therapy sessions as part of their custody agreement. After Emily's last intense visit to my apartment, everything seemed to spiral downward. She lost her job, was arrested for driving under the influence, and finally reached rock bottom, forcing her to face her struggles with money, alcohol, and relationships. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago, with Michael gaining primary custody of Jason. "Do you believe she will accept the trust's terms?" Robert inquired. I thoughtfully took a sip of my tea. "I am unsure, but the terms are non-negotiable. She receives a monthly allowance, but most of her share remains in trust unless she maintains her sobriety and completes financial counseling." "You are doing the right thing," Margaret reassured me. "It is tough love, but it is still love." Later that night, as Michael, Jason, and I celebrated over pizza in my cozy new apartment, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Mum, I would like to talk when you are ready." "Emily." I showed the message to Michael, whose eyebrows raised in surprise. Helen reacted with surprise. That was truly unexpected. "She has been improving," Jason said cautiously. "My therapist mentioned we might try supervised visits soon." I nodded and put the phone away. I intended to reply to Emily, but not tonight. Tonight was reserved for celebration, for the family that had risen from the ruins of betrayal. After they left, I settled on my small balcony, gazing at the city lights sparkling against the dark evening sky. Michael had invited me on a weekend trip to the shore next month, my first holiday in years. The senior advocacy group I had started using part of David's property earnings was already assisting others who had faced elder mistreatment. And next week, I would begin volunteering at the community center by leading a writing class for elderly people. My life, once shattered beyond repair 6 months ago, had come back together into something fresh, something uniquely mine. The phone on my lap buzzed again. A message from Michael read, "Thinking of you. Sleep well, Helen." I smiled and quickly typed a reply. Then my eyes landed on Emily's earlier message, still unanswered. Carefully, I crafted a response. "I'm ready to listen when you are ready to talk. Coffee next week." No matter what awaited with my daughter, reconciliation, refusal, or something in between, I would confront it on my own terms. The woman who once stood crying on a front lawn, watching her clothes being thrown onto the grass, was no longer there. In her place was someone new, stronger, wiser, and at last truly free. As I got ready for bed, my reflection caught my eye in the mirror. The silver strands of hair I no longer bothered to dye. The smile wrinkles I had stopped trying to conceal. The clear eyes that had witnessed both sorrow and recovery. For the first time in many years, maybe even decades, I finally recognized myself. "We made it, David," I breathed into the stillness of the room. "We have found our way forward." The road ahead promised difficulties. Emily's healing was delicate. My relationship with Robert was fresh, and restoring family connections required patience. But fear no longer held me captive. No matter what lay ahead, I was prepared to face it with the quiet power I had uncovered inside myself. The strength that had been present the whole time, just waiting for its moment to shine. Helen's last smile was not a goodbye, but a new beginning. The dawn of a life reclaimed, a heart restored, and an unbroken spirit. Tomorrow I would awaken to opportunities I could never have pictured 6 months ago. Step by step, day by day, I would keep building this new life, and I would do so knowing the greatest legacy I could offer was not riches or possessions, but the example of a woman who, even at 66, had learned it is never too late to rise, to start anew, and to embrace happiness. That truly was David's legacy. And now at last, it was mine too. Now I wonder about you who hear my story. What would you do if you were standing where I am? Have you ever faced something like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, I am now moving on to the last 2 stories from the channel's favorites, and they are sure to catch you off guard. I appreciate you watching until this point.